Morning, guys. It's Southwest UK near Bristol, and nice to meet you all. My name's Louis. I'm 56. I turned 57 in July, and I'm a lifelong Elvis fan, and I just like making Elvis videos and anything that relates to Elvis as a hobby, but also because it means a lot to me, because I feel that Elvis changed my life, starting from when I was a very small child. And I love Elvis, and I don't want to do anything to discredit Elvis. But I will always give you an honest opinion from, my opinion. And sometimes you guys won't agree with it, but sometimes I'll say things about Elvis that you don't want me to say, but generally I've got Elvis's back. So what I want to do, guys, is I did a video a few days ago just talking through all the different places where Elvis lived from birth till Memphis, Gracelands. And this got me thinking, because the first thing I realized from all these videos, from all these homes that Elvis had through Mississippi, Tupelo, all the way through to Memphis, is that there was many more moves than I expected, many more moves. So that got me thinking, there's quite a lot of things I don't know about Elvis. That really, as an Elvis fan that runs a fan channel, and by the way, I'm very grateful to all you subscribers and the new people joining, and the support you guys have given me for really the last 18 months. I started thinking, I need to learn a lot more about Elvis, just so that I, within myself, am more confident when I'm making these videos. So I'm going to just read through, and today the website I'm going to use is called Elvis Presley's Photos. Let's have a look. Can you see that? Not sure how clear that is. It's not crystal clear, but and there is I think there is an email. It's elvispresleymusic.com as well. So, and I'm going to just read through Elvis's life from birth with Gladys, right up until, let's just see where it ends. And it ends, talking about Colonel Tom Parker. Right. Now, the whole point of this is so that we can learn about Elvis together. I know that almost everything I read to you, you're going to say, I already know it, or you're going to think, I already know it. But this can be just to refresh you if you're an existing Elvis fan, or it can be for a newbie Elvis fan, just to learn the basics. And I know we've all watched all of the documentaries, and I just watched one on Prime. In England, we use Prime, which is connected to Amazon. You probably do where you are around the world. I know many of you that watch this live are asleep, and it's the middle of the night. So many of you will watch this when you wake up. So good morning to you guys. And I know a lot of you are in America, but I also get messages from all over the world. You'll be surprised how many different countries message me. And I really appreciate it. Wherever you are, I have loads of respect for you. And I'm really glad I get these messages. So the other thing, I've been trying to watch more of Elvis's films, and I found there's Blue Hawaii is on Prime. Love Me Tender in black and white, all color, is free on YouTube. So I'm still trying to find different places where I can watch the Elvis movies for free. We know there was 31 Elvis movies, and there was 2 documentary style movies, so 33 in total. And Elvis made movies from 1956 right until 1969. And one thing I did discover, which I thought was a bit worrying, that's Elvis for many years made 3 movies a year. So you can understand why he was so tired and overworked. It's just, that's too much. Anyway, I'm going to start from the beginning. If anyone jumps in and wants to ask anything, go ahead. and my reading isn't great, so I'm going to get my words mixed up. I'm going to say things wrong. I left school when I was 15, so my English wasn't great. My parents were from Cyprus, but I was born and bred in southwest in UK, in a small holiday town called Weston-super-Mare. Right, let's look at this. It says here, Elvis Aaron Presley, 1935 to 1953, the early years of a legend. About the end of June 1934, Gladys knew she was pregnant. Sometime around her 5th month, she was sure she was having twins. She was unusually large and could feel 2 babies kicking and had a family sides of the family. Gladys was earning $2 a day at Tupelo Garment Company, while Vernon worked at various odd jobs, including on a dairy farm of Orville S. Bean. So Mr. Bean. So I know it says Tupelo Garment Company, but I got a feeling she was doing cotton picking. So I'm not sure, but I read that somewhere. Right. With $180 that he borrowed, meaning Vernon, from Mr. Bean, so that's her boss, Gladys became pregnant in the spring of 1934. Vernon set about constructing a family home, and he and Gladys moved in that December. Elvis's birthplace was built by his father Vernon with help from Vernon's brother Vesta and both their father Jesse. So basically, Vesta and Vernon's father helped them build that house, whose relatively spacious 4-bedroom house sat next door, located above a highway that transported locals between Tupelo and Birmingham, Alabama, and nestled among a group of small, rough-hewn homes along the old Tupelo Road. And I think the address was 306 Tupelo Road, of the small house that we all know about, that we've seen many pictures and videos of, that we know was the birthplace of Elvis and Jesse Garon, and we know Jesse Garon was stillborn. Okay, so the house had no electricity and no indoor plumbing, and was similar to housing constructed for mill villages around that time. But I know that I've learned that they did have electricity and plumbing, but it wasn't connected unless you paid for it to be connected. So the other thing we're learning from this is that his brother Vesta and his father, Jesse, Vesta's father, which is Vernon's father, had a 4-bedroom house next door to their birth home that they all built together, where he had taken out a $180 loan from Gladys's employer, Mr. Bean. Okay, let's keep going. So on January the 8th, 1935, not long before dawn, Elvis Aaron Presley was born. Gladys delivered a second son that morning, a stillborn identical twin named Jesse Garon Elvis. Right, Jesse Garon. Now, it's funny, they say they were identical. And that's the first time I've heard that they actually were identical. So that's very interesting. So Elvis would be their only child. Now, I heard that in 1942, she did have another miscarriage. Is this true? Do any of you know? Right, so I got a bit of a snotty cold at the moment. After the birth, Gladys was close to death, and both her and Elvis were taken to a Tupelo hospital. See, this is another new thing I'm learning, that after the birth, she was rushed to hospital in Tupelo. After Gladys and Elvis returned home, it was noticed by a family member and friends that she was overprotective of her newborn son, paranoid that something bad would happen to him. That fits in with what we all know. And I was told that while she was in the fields picking cotton, she had created like a large sack that the baby Elvis could lie in, and she would pull him along behind her as she picked the cotton. Now that is very sweet, but shows that how protective she was. She couldn't leave his side, but she had to work because they needed to pay the bills and they were very poor. Right, here we go. Gladys' mother, Doll Smith. That's the first time I've heard the name of Gladys's mother, Doll Smith. Died in 1935 and was buried next to her husband, Bob Smith. Now, someone posted something to me yesterday and said that Vernon's parents, so that would be, what's his name? Jesse and his wife, I haven't got her name here yet, but were actually first cousins. And this could have been the reason why Elvis had so many conditions to do with the liver and his colon. Just generally was very unwell. Elvis began to be very unwell, very young in life, and he tried to hide it. And they're saying that it was because the grandparents were first cousins. So is that true? So Doll Smith died in 1935. And the other thing I read was that because of the first cousin thing happening, was that many of the family of the first cousins died in their 40s, if not all of them. So I think it said that Gladys had two brothers, I think, that also died in their 40s. So from liver and hearts and type problems. So if you know anything about this, please comment. Doll Smith died in 1935. So that's Gladys's mother, and was buried next to her husband, Bob Smith, again in an unmarked grave. So like Elvis, Gladys lost her mother at a young age. She was only 23. I mean, that's so young to lose your mother. And I think she'd already lost her father at this point. Elvis was 22 when he lost his mother. When Gladys passed, Elvis was 22. And we know about that. He's in the army. He gets rushed back to I think, a Memphis hospital and sits by her side. And she's got serious heart and liver problems. She'd also been taking these diet pills, which we know those diet pills are not good for you. They're extremely dangerous. And then he goes off to rest at Gracelands. And by the time he gets back, she's passed away, which is just so sad. And we've all seen the pictures of him sat on the steps with Vernon. I think that's the worst, the most unhappy and the most upset I've ever seen Elvis in anything, was when he sat on those steps. And a very private moment, but the press was still allowed to come in and take the pictures, which I've always thought was a bit unusual, because he really was in grief. And I think it took him a good year to just even function properly. But within all that, he had to go back to the army and carry on his service until 1960. So, and put on a brave face. And even though all he could think about was that he'd lost his mother, who was the most important person in his life. And the more and more interviews I watch, it's so obvious Elvis, after losing his mother, was literally never the same again, and never ever accepted the loss of his mother till the day he died. And we all miss our mothers and fathers when they pass, but I think with Elvis it was even more extreme. Anyway, right. So Elvis, although Gladys had really been on her way since father, no, right, so let me say again. Although Gladys had really been on her own since father died, when she was 19 in 1931, as her mother Doll had been bedridden from I can't even say that word. Tuberculosis. So basically, Doll, Gladys' mum, had I can't even say it. I'll say it how it's spelled here. Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis for many years. I'm gonna have to look up that because I don't actually know what that is. There were right here we are. Now we're going on to the humble beginnings. In the mid-1930s, in the middle of the Great Depression, East Tupelo was a haven for poor sharecroppers and factory workers whose meager resources still largely outstripped those of Elvis' parents. Not only did Vernon and his wife Gladys rely on welfare to pay the $15 that Dr. William Robert Hunt charged for the delivering of Elvis and his stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garum, but neighbors and friends also had to provide them with diapers, with nappies. So, okay, we've learned something here. Remember, we're learning together, and this is the whole point of me doing this live stream, is that I need to learn, and I enjoy doing it with you guys. So what we're learning is that she was on welfare, which I think we know that, because her income was very low. We also know that the Dr. William Robert Hunt gave birth to the twins, and I've done a video on Dr. William Hunt before, and he basically gave birth to all of the babies in and around Tupelo for many, many years, and you can actually see his graveside. He's buried there with his wife, and there was a video. Is it the Spa Man? Someone who did a video on that, and I did my own version. Okay, right. Let's have a look. So now there's confusion over the correct spelling of Elvis. And my dog's here. Come on, Ella. Come on. Come on, Sailor. Come on. So the bin men are here. Come on up here. Come up here. Come on. Is she gonna come? Come on. Ah, you get. Ooh. Say hello to the people at home. Here we go. Look, here we go. Look. She's not gonna look. She's more interested in the bin men outside. It's all right, they're going now, don't worry. Ah. You want to sit on here? Is it more safe? Oh, she seems like, come on, listen. It's okay, she's having a growl. Ella is 9, and her mother lives here as well, who is 14, and they're Jack Russells. Right, let's have a look, see if we can do this without embarking too much. They're both girls. There we go. It's all right. The bin men are going. Confusion over the correct spelling of Elvis's middle name existed. Dr. Hunt logged the name Elvis Aaron Presley in his ledger after the birth. The birth certificate issued by the state of Mississippi shows the spelling Aaron with just one A, which is also found on his draft notice. Elvis's gravestone in the Meditation Garden at Graceland, however, is engraved with the more common spelling Aaron, A-A-R-O-N. So the gravestone have the correct spelling. Alternative spellings of names were typical in the era of the Depression, particularly in rural communities where educational opportunities were limited and the written word was less significant than is now. Since the Presleys chose Elvis' middle name to honor their friend and church song leader, Aaron Kennedy, it is likely that Aaron was the intended spelling. Aaron with 2 A's. Right, so I've just learned something new then. So it basically says that, let me just see it. So since the Presleys chose Elvis' middle name to honor their friend and church song leader, Aaron Kennedy, it is likely that the spelling is with 2 A's. Right, I'll look him up. So basically, he is a song leader at church, and his name's Aaron Kennedy, okay? I'll look that up. And there's a lovely picture of them together, a very famous picture that we've all seen millions of times. He was such a cute baby. Elvis's family life was turbulent during the early years, largely due to poverty and financial circumstances of his parents, Vernon and Gladys. However, Elvis grows up within a close-knit working family consisting of his parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who all live near one another in Tupelo. There is little money, but the Vernons and Gladys do their best to provide for their son, who is the center of their lives. And they did really well. You know, he had all the things that a child would want. They really did work very hard to make sure that Elvis had everything. Right, so now we're on January the 7th, 1936. There's some pictures here. I know you've seen them all before, but I'll just quickly show you them. And let's read from the top. January the 7th, 1936. Noah Presley is elected mayor of East Tupelo. Noah was Jesse's brother, Elvis' grandfather. Okay, so every time I learn something new, I'm going to say it. So Jesse, who I think was married to Dole, am I getting my facts right? Was elected mayor of East Tupelo. November the 16th, 1937. Vernon, along with Gladys' brother, Travis, right? So there we are. We have a name of one of Gladys's brothers, was Travis Smith, and the friend Leather Gable were indicted. All right, okay. We're going on to the check fraud story where Vernon was sentenced to 3 years, but he did only serve 8 months. Is that right? Let's have a look. Could be wrong. A check that Orville Bean had made out to Vernon had been altered, and culprits stood accused by Mr. Bean. Now that's an interesting thing, because Mr. Bean lent Vernon $180 to build that house, the birth house, but then they altered the check. It's obviously for their benefit. So it's Mr. Bean that accused them of it. I mean, that's just not right, really. If Vernon did that, so the guy basically gave Vernon a mortgage, and then they fiddled a check. That was a big mistake by Vernon, a massive mistake. And we know he went to prison. So Vernon had sold Bean a hog and received for it a check of only $4, a sum much less than he had expected. Vernon was furious, as the hog was worth much more and he had been counting on the money. There is no record of how the deal was arranged, for how much. Yeah, this is the first time I've heard that story. So the basis of the fraudulent check, which basically sent Vernon to prison with someone else, you imagine the impact that had on Gladys, money-wise, and on Elvis. And I know this made Elvis and Gladys' bond grow even stronger, but this is a massive mistake. Massive. Vernon talked it over with Travis and Leather, and an idea emerged. Since Vernon had been sold short, why not make the check closer to the amount deserved? The courthouse records do not include details of how large a sum the money the check was altered to, but Elaine Dundee says that based on the memories of people she talked with, it was either $14 or $40. So, you know, from Vernon's point of view, he feels that he's been ripped off by Mr. Bean and he's trying to right the wrongs. But no, that was a very silly mistake, especially when he had a wife and child at home. So what is your opinion on that, guys? According to Vernon's old friend, Aaron Kennedy, he thinks the check was not altered but forged by putting a blank check over Orville Bean's and tracing his writing onto it. In any case, obviously none of the men had any idea of how a bank operates to prevent such fraud. Yeah, it was stupid. It was a silly mistake, a dumb mistake. Great pressure was put on Orville Bean by the community of East Tupelo to show leniency towards the offenders. To no avail, a bond of bail was fixed at $500 each on January the 4th, 1938. Only 2 bonds were filed for Travis and Leather Gable. Oddly, the records show Vernon's father, J.D. Presley, and J.G. Brown stood sureties for Travis Smith, but not Vernon. At least there is no record of such of it. It appears that Vernon spent 6 months in custody awaiting trial. Just had apparently never liked Vernon. Okay. He had kicked him out of home at 16. So Vernon was kicked out of his house by J.D. Presley at the age of 16. Right. He had on May the 25th, 1938, Vernon and Travis and Leather are sentenced to 3 years in Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchment for forging the check. I mean, 3 years. Could you imagine that? Could you really imagine being stood in court if you were Gladys and hearing the words 3 years? I mean, that must have devastated her life. In his book, The Last Train to Memphis, Peter Guralnick states that during the brief time Vernon was in prison, Gladys lost the house and moved briefly with her in-laws next door. So we know that her in-laws lived directly next door to the birthhouse that Vernon built with Vesta and with Jesse. This is contradicted by Elaine Dundee in her book, Elvis and Gladys, which states there are hard times for mother and son. Understandably, in view Jesse Presley's attitude towards his son Gladys had grown more and more uncomfortable living next door to her father-in-law. At some point during Vernon's prison sentence, Gladys moved out and stayed with her first cousin Frank Richards. Whatever the reason, the Presleys never returned to the house Vernon built. Stories differ to this and the reason how the house left their ownership. You can read more about this, Elvis and Gladys. There's also a book called Elvis and Gladys. It doesn't say where she moved to. I'm guessing somewhere in Tupelo. She couldn't bear to live next door to Jesse, Vernon's father. Maybe because there was bad feeling towards Vernon. It sounds to me like Jesse and Vernon didn't get on well. But at the same time, Jesse helped Vernon build the house. So what do you think, guys? Right. Is there some more pictures here? And this is a very good write-up, this is, from that website. So I recommend it. Right, here we go. February the 6th, 1939. Vernon is released from prison. So right, so we now know the day Vernon got out of prison. February the 6th, 1939. With 6 months suspension, their sentence granted on condition of continued good behavior. This leniency is the result of a petition of the citizens of Lee County and on a letter from Mr. O.S. Bean, so the person who have the charges against them and that they altered the check with, and that was also Gladys's employer and also loaned them the money to build their first home. Right. The party of whom the checks were forged. The document is signed by Governor Q. White. So in the end, Mr. Bean came good. He did the right thing and he got the father of Elvis out of prison early. And I'm guessing Leather as well. So on May the 16th, 1940, Vernon and Gladys and Elvis, along with their cousin Sales Presley. So I want to look up Sales Presley because I've heard that name a few times. With his wife Annie and their daughter are living in that's a difficult word. Pascagoula, a port near Biloxi. We all know about Biloxi. I've done a few videos on Biloxi, and Biloxi is that beautiful area near Tupelo where Elvis loved to holiday, and we've got the colour footage of Elvis fishing with friends and family, and Vernon and Gladys and June, his current girlfriend June, who he met because she was at the front of one of his concerts, and Elvis pulled June towards him. Is it June Junico? Very beautiful, and they had a lovely little romance, and Elvis wanted her to wait for him, but it just never happened. But there's some really good interviews with June. She seemed lovely, and Elvis was very smitten, and that colour footage in Biloxi is amazing. And I think Elvis returned to Biloxi many times. And I think that video shows a very special time in Elvis's life. I'm pretty sure it was, he was in the middle of his stardom in 1956. I think he had already made Love Me Tender. So he was very famous. But I feel that Elvis, when you see him in this Biloxi video, fame hadn't touched him. Fame hadn't harmed him and changed him and altered him, and hadn't damaged him. So I think you get a very natural pre-fame Elvis in that video, and I highly recommend you guys watch it. It's all over YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and it's in very good color, and it shows Gladys feeding Elvis, as well as Elvis fishing and smoking, even dancing and pretending to sing and having the time of his life. So please watch that video and listen to Junico's interviews. They're really good. Okay, let's have a look. So, Biloxi, at the southernmost tip of Mississippi on the Gulf of Mexico, Vernon and Sales, his cousin or her cousin, had found work on the WPA project to expand the Pascagoula shipyards. Yes, I know about that. Vernon was working for the shipyard. June the 20th, homesick for family and friends, both families returned to East Tupelo. For a time, the Presleys shared a two-family house on Reese Street and Vesta. On Reese Street with Vesta and Kletz. So Kletz is obviously Vesta's wife. On November the 3rd, Vernon is granted an indefinite suspension from his sentence. That must have been such a relief for Gladys and for little Elvis. Right, and I think that's around 1940. So Elvis is only 5 years old. November the 6th, 1940. The Presleys are now living in a rented house on 510, and it says half Maple Street. 510 and half Maple Street, East Tupelo. So there's another move. And this is what I'm learning, is that there were lots of small moves that the Elvis and Gladys and Vernon did. 1941, Elvis enters the first grade at East Tupelo Consolidated School. So, yeah, so is he 5 or 6, 1941? 1942, during World War II, while Vernon was away helping to build a prisoner of war camp with WPA. See, it's the first time I've learned this, that Elvis helped build a prisoner of war camp. Gladys was admitted to hospital, in the words of Mrs. Leona Moore, now a retired nurse who was working at the Tupelo Hospital at the time. The truth is, she had a miscarriage. This is what I read this. One of my subscribers sent this to me. Right, so it is true. This explains why Gladys never had another child. She had tried and unfortunately failed. Elvis was to remain her only child. So yes, Gladys did have a miscarriage in 1942. So that is true. So I thought it might have been a rumor. In 1943, from the age of 8, Elvis would spend many Saturday afternoons at Tupelo Courthouse, from where WELO broadcasts, W-E-L-O broadcasts, its Saturday Jamboree, an amateur program which started at 1 p.m. and went till 4:30. It had live audiences composed of up to 150 people. Anyone could sing or play on the program, and Elvis did many times. Old Chet being just one of the many songs he sung. Right, okay. So I didn't know that. So basically, he on WELO, and it broadcast on a Saturday. It was an amateur program that started at 1 p.m. finished at 4:30. You could sing, and Elvis actually sang Old Chet. So that would have been his first time on air. So in 1943, so he was only about 8. That's the first time I've heard that. Do you know about that, guys? Right. On August 18th, 1945, Vernon purchases a new route. Right, start again. Vernon purchases a new 4-room house on Berry Street, East Tupelo, from Orville Bean. The price was $2,000. It's funny how it's Mr. Bean again. So he's bought. So even though all this stuff has happened, is it the same Mr. Bean? It must be. So even all this stuff has happened years after him being in prison, or a couple of years, Mr. Bean sells him a house. Is it the same Mr. Bean? For $2,000, with a down payment of $200 and a monthly installments of $30 plus 6% interest. Entering 5th grade, Elvis, along with the rest of the boys, hoped that all of the homeroom teachers, he wouldn't get Mrs. Alita Grimes, Orville Bean's daughter. Right, so I've heard about Alita Grimes. She's the one, I'm pretty sure, she's the one that could tell that Elvis had unusual talent. So again, here it says Orville Bean's daughter. Now, I just want to clarify which Orville Bean this is. She had the reputation of being hard, to one you couldn't get away with anything, like her father. Yes, so he refers to her father. So I think that's the same Mr. Bean. But Mrs. Grimes was the one he got. At the beginning of the school term, Mrs. Grimes asked her pupils if any of them would like to say a prayer. Elvis got up and said one, and then went straight into rendition of Old Chet. So Elvis started singing Old Chet in class to Mrs. Grimes. Mrs. Grimes was highly impressed. He sang it so sweetly that she told Elaine Dundee. She took him to the school principal, Mr. Cole, and again Elvis sang Old Chet. Mr. Cole was similarly impressed. This was a few weeks before the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and the Dairy Show held in Tupelo. Elvis was promptly entered into the competition. So just that section alone, isn't that lovely? Where Mrs. Grimes notices how beautiful Elvis's voice is and is so impressed that she takes him to the principal, Mr. Cole, and made Elvis stand there and sing Old Chet in front of the principal. Imagine how nerve-wracking that was for Elvis at such a young age. I think he's 8. Definitely between 8 and 10. And then that prompts them to want to enter him in the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show in Tupelo. And Elvis promptly entered. Right, so is this the one where he came 5th? Let's just keep reading. On October 3rd, 1945, it is Children's Day at an annual Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show at the fairgrounds in the middle of the town. Yeah, 10-year-old Elvis stands on a chair at a microphone and sings Old Chet in the Youth Talent Contest. The talent show is broadcast over WEL0 radio. And I never knew that. I didn't know it was broadcast. I knew he'd done I knew that he'd done the competition. I mean, entered the talent show. I never knew it was broadcast live. So that's a newbie for me. Did you know, guys? Second prize is $5 and free admission to all the rides at the fair. Legend has it that wearing glasses and standing on a chair to reach the microphone in front of several hundred people, Elvis won 2nd place. Elvis's prize supposedly consisted of free glasses for all of the rides at the fair, plus $5. Elvis did wear glasses for a short time in the 5th grade. And I've seen that picture of Elvis with his glasses on. Elvis did not place 2nd at the fair. However, Elvis did not place 2nd at the fair. Because if it's the one I'm thinking of, he came 5th. He may have placed 5th, but probably did not win a prize. But his own recollection, he wins 5th place, but gets a whipping the day from his mother, probably for going on one of the more dangerous rides. Okay. January the 8th, 1946. Elvis' 11th birthday. Gladys buys Elvis his first guitar at the Tupelo hardware store at the cost of $7.90. So obviously we know this very famous story where he was given the choice of a bike or a guitar. Here it says $7.90. It's funny because I watched an interview yesterday on Prime and it said $12.90. So I'm not sure. According to the store owner, F.L. Bobo, Elvis really wanted a rifle, not a bike, a rifle. And we know that he loved guns. But his mother was dead against that and talked Elvis into a guitar with the offer that she will pay for the guitar that Elvis cannot afford, but she cannot afford a rifle. In the end, after some thought, Elvis gladly accepts the guitar, and other versions of the story state it was a bicycle that Elvis wanted. Yeah, there we are. So it was a gun, basically. For a country boy, in particular, a rifle does sound more likely, particularly when given Elvis' penchant or such later in life. Penchant. I think they're saying he had a love of guns and rifles later in life. So, July the 18th, 1946, just 11 months after purchasing the house of Berry Street, Vernon sells, and I've heard about this, and transfers the deed over to a friend, Aaron Kennedy, for $3,000 to avoid foreclosure proceedings. Immediately then, Aaron Kennedy gives Orville Bean a deed of trust, which is the same thing as a mortgage. The Presleys move into Tupelo, first to Commerce Street, then Mulberry Alley, a small lane running besides the fairground, just opposite the town's black neighborhood, Shake Rag. Wow, there's a lot in that. So he makes $1,000 profit, Vernon, but only because they were going to foreclose because he couldn't afford the payments. And they quickly move. Again, Mr. Bean is involved in all of this, who did basically do him another big favor. And they then shows two moves, one to Commerce Street and then to Mulberry Alley. So these are more moves. I keep saying this, we're given the impression that he lived in the birth house all his childhood until he moved to Memphis. But really, there are many moves. And then they mention Shake Rag, which I think was a nickname for people living in the Shake Rag areas near Tupelo. And the nickname came from these people, mainly non-white and very poor, how they did their washing outside the front of their homes, where you get the term Shake Rag. And we know that Elvis was very comfortable around non-white people and loved them and made many friends and was heavily influenced by these people. And I've done a video of one of his friends from Shake Rag where they would sneak into the cinema and hide at the back in the top row to watch these films. And Elvis obviously loved the movies. In September 1946, Elvis enters the 6th grade at Milam Junior High School. And I got a feeling the cinema that they used to sneak into was also called the Milam Junior High School, or Milam. Elvis sings a song at the invitation of teacher, Mrs. Camp, who records he was so good that the children just got quiet and pleased with him. And is that where he sings Old Chet in front of the school? I'm not sure. By 1947, by the time Elvis was 12, Mississippi Slim let Elvis sing on 2 occasions. Mississippi Slim, a hillbilly singer, was Elvis's first musical hero. See, something I've just learned that is new. Mississippi Slim was Elvis's first musical hero. So I have to look up Mississippi Slim. He was a hillbilly singer. He was crazy about music. That's all he talked about, because James Osborne, Slim's younger brother, there was a slight problem with his first appearance. Slim had announced that a young lad, Elvis Presley, would be on the following week. But when the time came, Elvis had such a bad case of stage fright, he couldn't do it. He did go on the following week, and on at least one occasion, Elvis was backed by Slim whilst he sang. Well, that's really interesting. So he was so nervous, he missed a week, but then plucked up the courage to do it. And that's so interesting. Right, I hope I'm not boring you too much, guys, but I'm learning here, and I find this extremely interesting. So September 1947, by the time Elvis enters 7th grade at Milam Junior High School, the family is living at 1010 Green Street in Tupelo, a house designated for whites only in a respectable colored neighborhood. Right, it's such a shame that apartheid, that racial segregation happened. It's unbelievable. It's unthinkable. But it's so obvious that Elvis was not racist at all and felt very comfortable around non-whites. Anyway, so this tells me there's another move here in Green Street, Tupelo in 1947. The house number was 1010. And I just see an upward slope where the Gladys and Vernon are trying to improve their lives. And there's these moves are all about having a better standard of living. Right. 1948, Elvis enters 8th grade at Milan Junior High School. November the 6th, 1948, when Elvis was on 8th grade, the Presleys moved to Memphis, Tennessee. Right, this is the big move that we've all heard about. There's a car that's parked outside the birth home that is a replica of the one that they all packed their stuff to move. And again, if you're not really into Elvis and really understand the history, you do think he moved from the birth home to Memphis, Tennessee, and you don't realize there's all these small moves in between. So here we are. Right, here we are. This documents the different homes, so it gives me an idea of just how many homes there was. So 370 Washington Street, 572 Poplar, 185 Winchester Avenue, 698 Saffrons, 462 Alabama, 2414 Lamar, 1414 Getwell, 1034 Audubon, and 3764 Elvis Presley Boulevard. And obviously the Elvis Presley Boulevard, I'm guessing, is Tupelo Road. I don't know. I'm not really sure what. On his last day at Milan Junior High School, at the crest of the class, the teacher gave Elvis 30 minutes to perform before the class. The last song he sang then was traditional Leaf on a Tree. You see, that is completely new to me. I've never heard that before. That Elvis, on the last day of his Milan Junior High School, did a 30-minute performance in front of his class, and the last song he sang was Leaf on a Tree. I never knew that. Did you guys? In Memphis, Elvis is enrolled in the 8th grade at Humes High School as Elvis Aaron Presley. I think Humes High School is the most famous school that we all know about. And that's where he met Red West, who stuck up for him because some of the boys didn't like the way he brushed his hair and did his hair, and they got him in the toilets and cornered him, and were going to cut his hair, and Red West walks in and stops them. This is very famous. And he made some other friends. There's the DJ, I've forgotten his name now, that he made friends with at that school. And I think Elvis did love Humes High. And isn't it known that he would sit outside Humes High with his guitar, singing and playing? And he was known that he looked slightly odd because his dress sense was different, his shoes, his hair, and he just generally had a different way about him. And right, let's keep going. September the 20th, 1949, the Presleys received approval to live at Lauderdale Courts. Right, here we are, another move. A 66 building, 433 unit public house project on the north end of downtown Memphis. Elvis' musical horizons broadened during his high school years. He took advantage of many ways to hear music in Memphis: radio, church, record stores, nightclubs, and more, and also played in a band with 4 other boys from Lauderdale Courts during his junior years at Humes High School. Elvis also began to focus on his appearance. He let his hair, his sideburns grow longer, and dressed in a wild, flashy clothes that made him stand out, especially in the conservative, conformist Deep South of the 1950s. He would wear dress pants to school every day. Everybody else wore jeans, but he wore dress pants, and he would wear a coat and fashion a scarf like an ascot tie, as if he was a movie star. Yeah, and that made him stand out. It made him different. Of course, he got a lot of flack for this because he stood out like a sore thumb. People thought that he was really weird. I've heard this in many interviews that they thought he was odd. It was like he was already portraying something that he wanted to be. Yeah, completely accept that. And even me, when I was 6 years old, I used to wear my collar up and grease my hair and dress like Elvis. And I looked completely different to all my friends that were in my class. And I had a bag with Elvis written on it in glitter, 6 years old. And this is in probably in 1974. And I stood out because in 1974, many of the kids weren't into Elvis. They were into other musics. And I didn't care because I loved Elvis so much. I was so proud to be an Elvis fan at 6 years old that I was going to gel my hair and I used Brill cream and wear my shirt collar up. I didn't care what anyone said. I was a proud Elvis fan, even at that age. Life continues to be hard. Vernon and Gladys go for a job. They go from job to job. Elvis works at various jobs to help support himself and his parents. And we know this, that Elvis helped pay the bills. The Presley's Smith clan remain close-knit. Elvis and his family attend Assembly of God Church. And I think that church is now next to the Vernon birth home. I'm pretty sure. The teenage Elvis continues to be known for singing with his guitar. He buys his clothes on Beale Street. We could do a whole video on Beale Street and Elvis's influence on Beale Street with obviously jazz and blues. I know Elvis absolutely loved country music as well. So Beale Street, and he absorbs the black blues gospel we know that the massive influence of gospel music on Elvis and how he just absolutely loved to sing it. He hears a lot of this on Beale Street. He also a regular audience member of the all-night white and black gospel sings that are held in downtown. And I've read about this already. And so basically they were called the all-night. That's true. So they would do gospel all night. I wonder if that was all the way through the night. At the age of 13, a very impulsive, obviously very much in love Elvis forged a marriage license for his parents, placing his and Magdalene Morgan names on the certificate. Elvis known Magdalene for the first Assembly of God Church. So he obviously met Magdalene in church. He writes in the September the 11th as the date of their marriage, something which Magdalene expresses great surprise when she learns of it almost 50 years later. I've done a video on this, I think. It pretends. I've had chats about this before, and that I think if Elvis hadn't have become famous in the way that he did, that he was going to settle down and have children and get married very young in life. Elvis, he wanted that lovely family and children. He really did. But once he became very famous and the temptations that come with fame, not just with money, but the attention he got from the girls, especially because he was so good looking and talented, Elvis took a different direction. But I think all the way through Elvis's wild years, and obviously we know he was very unfaithful and he found it impossible to be faithful. I actually think if Elvis had not had this talent and not become famous, I think he was going to be very faithful, a very loyal, decent dad, and would have had many children and would have had a great life growing up through his teens and 20s and 30s. And who knows what Elvis would have become if he hadn't had this talent. So I think that deep down Elvis was a very humble person that wanted the right things that were taught to him in church. He had good morals and he was a decent person at heart. And I think Elvis had a dilemma through his whole life where he had lived this wild life and been unfaithful and not been true to his marriage. but deep down knew that that was wrong. And I think this was always a fight for him, that he had made many mistakes that he regretted. And we know that Priscilla also made many mistakes as well. She was unfaithful as well. But the real Elvis, the core of Elvis, and I truly believe this, was a very decent man with a good heart, a kind heart, not just generous and charming, but also really did want to live by the Bible. So fame can do a lot of damage. And I think if Elvis had not become famous, I think he might still be alive today. So what are your views, guys? Right, let's keep going. So Elvis loved comic books. In particular, his favorite was Captain Marvel. I want to do a video on these comic books because I've heard about this before. Cousin Harold Lloyd remembers that when Elvis was in high school in Memphis, the two would swap comic books. Sometimes I would borrow some from him. He would let me have them because he knew I would return them in good shape. So I expect swapping comic books was very common in the late 40s and 50s. So Sam Phillips opens the Memphis recording service at 706 Union Avenue in 1950. So I'm going to end the video here because I think that is a whole nother live stream and I want to go through that in detail. But the thing I did learn here is that Sun Records, Sun Studios on 706 Union Avenue was not called Sun Records. It was called Memphis Recording Service. So we're going to end it there. And I just want to give thanks. I'm going to carry this on tomorrow, but I just want to give thanks to the website, Elvis Presley Photos. And it does have, let me just see if I can see it's elvispresleymusic.com. And so there it is there. I wonder if I can make it bigger. I'll show you guys. Thank you to the website. I need to sort of learn more about it. Someone's put a lot of time into this, and I've taken advantage of it at my benefit, so that we can all learn together. So what I'm trying to do now, guys, obviously I make my videos that I do most days with pictures and video clips and my own take on everything. But I also want to learn about Elvis and his life and anything to do with his life that includes relatives with you guys, because I am not an Elvis expert. I am just a fan that loves Elvis and anything to do with Elvis. I love anything that touched Elvis's life in it all, and that includes other celebrities and friends and family and the Memphis Mafia and Priscilla and his children. I mean, Lisa Marie and her children, and it could be Tom Jones, just anything that has touched Elvis's life. I like to make videos about, and sometimes not always favorable subjects. So I will talk about the negative stuff as well. And I'm trying to do this with you guys as subscribers, but also with newbies, because I'm trying to reintroduce Elvis to people that have never heard of Elvis, that are just finding out about Elvis and want to learn about Elvis. And many of my videos are just 1 minute long. And that is because I'm doing short clips of all of Elvis's life. Because I think with Instagram, with TikTok and Twitter, obviously called X, and Facebook, that many of the people just want to see a little clip of Elvis, 1 or 2 minutes long. They don't want me to bore them with these long videos, because I think if the videos are too long, that people flick to the next thing on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. So I try and make it a lot of information in a short amount of time for the newbie fans, and of all ages, because I think there's a lot of fans learning about Elvis, discovering Elvis, really from a very young age, from 5, and then going up through all their decades, 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So all new fans that are rediscovering Elvis. Elvis is more famous now than ever. And part of what I'm trying to show with my video clips is that Elvis wasn't just this overweight person that died on the toilet, that took too many prescribed medications, that was depressed and died young, and that had many affairs and that had that met a 14-year-old girl. These are the horrible things that we're all repeatedly told about. No, that isn't Elvis. Elvis was one of the was to me the most talented man that ever lived. But it wasn't just that with Elvis. The most beautiful man that ever lived. But it wasn't just that. He was a very decent man that felt guilty that he had become so successful, couldn't understand why he had become so successful, and wanted to share his wealth, and spent his life giving away his money, giving away all his money to charities. Elvis spent many parts of his life trying to help others, and not just buying people cars and homes and giving money to people. He really wanted to help people, and he would pay for many people's medical bills. And Elvis would just read the newspapers looking for people to help. How many people do you know that when they become wealthy, all they want to do is give away their money and help people? And Elvis did this right from 1955, from the second he got money. He didn't just want to help his parents and buy his parents a pink Cadillac and a home. He wanted to help everyone. He wanted to support all of the cousins and the family members. He wanted to help support all of the Memphis Mafia. And he went back to his roots in Memphis, in Mississippi, Tupelo, and in Memphis, and helped all the people that he grew up with, including the schools and the churches and the charities. And he would give away to 50 charities a year. Just in Memphis. And that was a very small part of what Elvis was doing to help people. And there are many celebrities that he helped as well when they had financial problems. And I think someone said to me that Elvis paid for all of, I can't remember the name now, but one of the black artists, he paid for all of their medical expenses. Elvis was so good to the core. And I don't think I've ever met a celebrity, read about a celebrity that was genuine to that degree. And he wanted no recognition. He didn't want it spoken about in the papers or on the TVs, how generous he was. A big thing with Elvis was, I'll give you money, I'll help your charity, I'll help you, but I don't want you to tell anyone, keep it a secret. Jackie Wilson, there we go. So the doorbell's just rung. I'll be back. Just 1 second. Hello, Grumpy Fly. Remind me your name. All right, I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. Right. Good morning to you, Grumpy. Tell me your name. I think you're the one that told me about Jackie Wilson. Is that correct? So I'm sort of coming to the end of this now. We've been on for over an hour. And in case you've only just joined, I've gone through Elvis's life from being born in Mississippi Tupelo on Tupelo Road, and just all the house moves that happened or apartment moves and all the small things that happened to Elvis. And I've gone right up to 1950, I think. And I've stopped at the point where Elvis walks into Memphis Records, Sun Studios, because I want to create another part. And that's for tomorrow. So I was just sort of saying, and thanks for Grumpy Flyer. 1995, so that tells me your age. I was just trying to say, I think Elvis is misunderstood. And like some of the documentaries that get released about Elvis, I just don't like them. I think they're very unfair to him. And like there was one that was on Prime that said Elvis's girlfriend, and they're just all trying to say about the fact that they were so young. But in the 1950s, it was completely normal to have a young girlfriend. It was completely normal to marry a younger person. Yes, now in 2024, I just think people focus too much on the prescribed medication, and they don't talk about the illnesses that Elvis had. Elvis had some very serious illnesses. And one of my subscribers yesterday, and I think I might have, let me just see if I can find it. I might have copied it onto my, yes, here it is. Right, so this is from user GZ5XT1, and she sends me a message. So we talk about Elvis's prescribed medication. Now, we're not told as much as we should be that Elvis was very unwell. Elvis, some of them blame the fact that his the grandparents on Vernon's side were first cousins, and that's why so many of Elvis's relatives died in their 40s. So if I could just read you this. This is a comment from a user. I don't know if you can see that. It's quite a long comment. It is now time for the real Elvis fans to hear the truth about his lifelong health struggles. In the book called Destined to Die Young by reporter Sally Hodel, which she's on YouTube, I've watched her interviews, it explains what a child whose maternal parents were first cousins overcame. Yes, his mother's parents were first cousins. So, yeah, so it's his mother's parents. All right, not Vernon's, his mother's parents were first cousins. Sadly, this produced a double gene called Alpha 1, which was a double gene which sealed the fate of his mother, who died at the age of 46, her two brothers who died in their mid-40s, and poor Elvis, who died at 42. They all died, all of the same things: liver failure, heart trouble, lung disease. Had never been taken for the first drug. So had they never taken the first drug, still would have died in their 40s, which wasn't even recognized in that era. Okay, you know the book then. What is your name, by the way? Sorry. I'm Louis. My name's Louis. So let me just read this. The first drug. Right. First, when Elvis was born in 1935, it was the Great Depression. They were unspeakably poor with no medical attention. Most of his early life, he had a severe twisted colon and might have kept his twin brother from actually living. All right, I didn't know that. So they're saying his twisted colon might have been the reason the twin brother passed. That's the first time I've read that. He had a weak immune system and almost died twice of high fever and tonsillitis. Again, I didn't know that. Sally Holder says by the time he was in his mid-30s, he had emergency surgery to save his right eye from the onset of glaucoma. And that this is when he employed Dr. Nick. Now, I knew about the glaucoma. Let's have a look. And it says here, when he... So with the glaucoma, he spent 72 hours and had to be hospitalized for 72 hours. He had begun a series of medications for early onset arthritis. Yeah, I'd heard this. And took painkillers to help him move on stage. I knew about that. Hairdressers Larry Geller said that Elvis had a mild heart attack in 1975, which I didn't know about, and his presence and wouldn't let Larry call the doctor. He didn't want his friends to think he was sick and weak, so he never discussed too much about his illnesses except with Larry and Charlie Hodge. He didn't want to let people down, especially his fans. He had gotten his family out of poverty and took care of their needs and all of his band and his buddies, just like his mother. The last 4 years of his life, he went into decline. His hands and body would swell up. His lungs were not clear. He used an inhaler. And you see that, him using the inhaler in one of the videos of him backstage with Ginger Oldham. He died not on the toilet. He died as he got up from a severe constipation problem. And we knew about this, the constipation, and took one step and died from a heart attack. The body had 11 functioning systems. 9 of his were blocked. His liver, the body has 11 functioning systems. 9 of his were blocked. His liver wasn't filtering, so his body was toxic and stopped functioning. The important thing to remember is this: constant hammering on his drugs and what he took, on how he took, was a problem. It wasn't his heart. It was his heart that gave out towards the end. So that lists almost all of his health problems. It's very sad to read. So Elvis, had it all going the wrong way towards the end. And don't forget, with Elvis, it wasn't just the health problems. He did suffer from depression, and he had got fed up, and he did feel like he'd lost his purpose. And there was a lot of guilt as well, I think, to do with Priscilla and the affairs he'd had. And I think Elvis, as a Christian man, felt that he had done many things that he had done, even though we know that Elvis helped thousands and thousands of people. And I think he's still helping thousands and thousands of people now. So I could just go on and on. I'm going to move on to part 2 of this, what I've done today, tomorrow. And I've been on way too long, 1 hour and 12 minutes. So when you guys wake up, and some of you will watch this, I'm very grateful. Good morning to you. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you don't find it too boring. And again, I'm just trying to learn all about Elvis with you guys. So have a great day. Thanks a lot, Grumpy Flyer. Yes, great book. And I want to do a video on the Jackie Wilson thing. I'm definitely going to put something together on that. All the best, guys. Peace out. And I hope you've got nice weather wherever you are. Good morning to you if you're just getting up. I'm going to give you a wave.